Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Thursday. As we say in South Africa, Puza Thursday. Puza is a African word that's kind of made up in the townships, as we call it, for party. So, in other words, it's drinking before the weekend. And that's what in South Africa it's Puza Thursday. Although I don't do any Puza here, I can assure you. But anyway, it's just a fun word. It's a fun day for us here. So on a fun day, we will have Dr. Dennis Carroll, who's definitely not talking about Puza Thursday, but vampires he has known. And I want to just tell you, Dr. Dennis and I were just chatting a little bit off air, and this comes from his a new book, Paracryptology, and there is a name like that is there, and I do believe I have it right. Hunting monsters, excuse me, and things of nightmares. And what we're going to be looking at today is a chapter of the book called Vampires I Have Known. So, wow, I mean, we just very grateful to have Dr. Dennis here, who's definitely an expert in the cryptid arena, cryptid field, cryptid, I don't even know what you call it. I'll just sit there and watch from a distance. You guys all go very brave going out there hunting monsters. I'll just hunt them in the metaphysical world. I'm not sure I can do it in the physical world. But anyway, so yeah, and before I go any further, yeah, huge shout out to our new member, Alexandra Bennett. Thank you so very much. Really appreciate your membership. And of course, our regular Joanne Breeze, who's in fact coming on tomorrow for an interview. So catch her at 12 o'clock GMT +2. I know most of you Americanos are sleeping then, but if you happen to be awake, catch our live show with Joanne Breeze, who's an amazing survivor from Australia. Got some incredible wisdom and really talking about the fractured soul. This is part 2 actually. So if you haven't seen her first show, please watch it. After a survivor of SRA, satanic ritual abuse, speaks about the fracturing of the soul that the children, like herself, have gone through and how it's possible to heal. She got to the point of really forgiving her father, who was absolutely one of her main, probably the main abuser, and how that is actually possible after something like that. So yeah, catch our show with Joanne. And of course we have Caleb J tomorrow evening as well. But we'll keep you updated as we go along. So yes, please join our membership. And speaking about membership, we have Jessie again on Tuesday, actually. So Jessie will be on for membership on Tuesday at 1600, well, that's 4 o'clock, 4 p.m. GMT +2. Okay, I think that's 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for you guys, where we're doing the membership and we're actually decoding Notre Dame. So that's going to be cool. And then, of course, we have her on later with that amazing Italian lady, Nancy, I think it's Krupi is her surname, who's taken on the legal system and the justice system, scientist, amazing. So great guests coming on this week. Watch the community board. There is a schedule on there. And of course, my good friend Olav Zipser will be on Sunday. He's the world champion skydiver and created this incredible form of free flying. That guy jumped from the Russian stratosphere, plus minus 30 years ago, from 47,000 feet, parachuted without a spacesuit. They still hold the world record for that. So that's the kind of mind Olav is. So brilliant, brilliant being. So join us to chat with him on Sunday as well. And without any further ado, taram. Hello, Dr. Dennis. I'm so happy to have you back on this Thursday after I bummed out a week ago. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm going to do my Bella Lugosi impersonation. Good evening, Okay.
We love it. We love it. We love it.
Well,
Dr. Dennis,
I'm gonna
I
tell
have to tell
everybody,
you, we had.
grab your crosses and your holy water. Okay, we're ready. All right. Got my snake. Got my hammer. I'm good. I'm good to go here.
Well, when we look at some of the pictures, one of the pictures that you sent earlier on, I just hope it's up here now. It was like, we got to give some holy water to that handsome guy, but we'll put that up later, right? But without any further ado, would you maybe just like to open for us in prayer, please? Speaking about holy water.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today and humbly, we ask you to please secure this broadcast against any kind of technical difficulties, that you will also seal, protect us, sanctify us with your peace, power, and protection, that you will give us the shield of your holy angels around us to keep us in all our ways. We ask, O Lord God Almighty, that you will bless the people, each and every single one listening and watching this program today in a special way. We know that if this is your will, it will be done, such as your will on heaven and in earth. And we ask this in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, et Patres, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dennis. Welcome, everybody. Wonderful to see you in the chats. Really appreciate all the wenches with wrenches as well. And I could always remember the guys with, I don't know what. Anyway, we have the wenches there today. So thank you. Welcome, everybody. Dr. Dennis, we're talking about the vampires you have met. So maybe you want to just tell us, I know we did speak a little bit earlier on, I mentioned your book, and that this is in fact a chapter from your new book, right? That you're sharing with us. And I think it might even be more than one show from what we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a very dark road we're going down today, okay? And like I say, we may have to do a part 2 on this, but it's definitely a very dark road to travel because of all of the evil spirits that roam this world. The vampires among the most darkest of them all. And there are different, and the reason why I say we may have to do 2 parts, there are more than just one kind of vampire out there, folks. Absolutely. And this new book that I'm working on called Paracryptidology is sort of a combination of cryptid and the paranormal or the supernatural aspects of all the stuff that we are always, as boots on the ground researchers, looking into. It has many different rabbit holes, many different avenues on this road that we're going to go down. And but it is a very dangerous avenue as well, because among all of these things, the vampire is a definite danger to the human soul, no matter which way it comes at you, whether it's a living human vampire or whether it's an undead demonic vampire. It is still a very dangerous thing, absolutely. And yes, I have met some vampires in my day, and yes, I have hunted for vampires. I don't call myself a vampire hunter, but it did happen, and I had to step up to the occasion. But definitely, as a monster hunter, I can tell you that this is a very, very strange and bizarre way of looking at things when you look at the world of the vampire. And we've got to remember one thing before we get into this. We've got to forget what Hollywood has told us about the vampire, okay? Let me say this. He is not a good-looking guy that looks like Brad Pitt or Frank Langella or anybody like that. He is not that good of a looking guy. He looks more like, to me, that picture like I sent you, Shandy, looks more like a rat looking kind of a thing.
Shall I show the pic?
Yeah. It's nothing sexy about him, but he wants you to see him that way, because that is the power of the vampire, is that he has that glamour he can use on you. Now, you wouldn't want to date that guy, would you? Definitely not.
He looks like a tick.
Yeah,
he looks like a tick.
Yeah, that's sort of a rat teeth. Yeah, and that is basically what you're looking at there. Is the lowest form of vampire. That's eventually what they will end up looking like. I'm talking about the undead variety now. look how very demonic looking that is. Now, that comes from the movie Salem's Lot, by the way. But it is very classical as to what these guys supposedly really look like, but they don't want you to see them that way. They're going to use the glamour on you. They're going to use their power of persuasion and hypnotism on you and get you to see what they want you to see so that they can get you in their power to do what it is they want to do to you. But like I said earlier, there are many different kinds of vampires, and we'll get into that. And if not today, maybe next time. There are many different kinds that we have to watch out for. And some of this stuff goes back to the beginning of mankind. We have known vampires ever since our existence in many different ways. I have to have my own interaction with these things. Like I said, I've said before, I was a monster kid when I was a kid. I loved monsters. I breathed and ate and slept monsters. I watched monster movies. I read monster comics. I was deep into this stuff. But I knew back in the back of my mind, I realized that most of this stuff was not real. It was made up. I've always been a realist that way, So it kind of took me aback when I grew up to find out that, hey, these things are real. There's nothing made up about vampires and werewolves, and we're going to have to probably one day do a show definitely on werewolves, my favorite subject, by the way. But anyway, I've been accused of being a werewolf, but I won't go into that today. Anyway, I've dated some werewolves too. But anyway, the whole thing is we have to understand.
You dated some werewolves? No. Hang on, Dennis. You can't just glide over that. We're going to catch you with that one. What do you mean you dated some werewolves, right? What are you talking about?
Well, they were kind of like animals. They had an animalistic side to them, all right? And I'm not too sure about our friend Jessica Jones either. I'm gonna have to do the werewolf test on her, okay, and make sure, okay. But anyway,
I think all you Krypton hunters and huntresses have all got a little bit of vamp in you and a little bit of a werewolf in you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing, right? But at least you got more human.
Well, I can buy it. Yes, definitely, I can buy that. But anyway, I've been known to get kind of body sometimes. But anyway, the thing we got to look at when you look at werewolves, vampires, or whatever the situation is, these things are basically inherently, some of them, supernatural, far beyond the natural stuff of what the world around us is. That's where you get that term supernatural from, folks. It means far above what's natural. It even goes far beyond what's paranormal, by the way, because paranormal simply means a little bit out of the normal or over the normal section. Supernatural is getting into very high strangeness and high darkness. That's what we've got to look at on that, okay? And we've got to understand the history of vampires, how they have coexisted with us down through the ages, how they are venerated by many things. And Hollywood has got it wrong, okay, in many aspects, just like they have with the werewolf and a lot of these other things, because they're doing stuff for dramatic purposes, okay? But if you go back to the folklore, the vampire is inherently evil, and to become a vampire, you have to be a very evil person, okay, folks? Mostly, that's the way it goes. And you lose your soul to the darkness to become this vampire. But you can also acquire the vampire tendencies through black magic as well. Like we talked about with the werewolf. You reach a certain plateau of power in black magic. You can become a werewolf. You can become a tiger. You can become a cat. You can become a crow. You can become a vampire. Okay, a vampire is
that shape-shifting? Would that be shape-shifting? Are you talking about obviously it would make a lot of sense to me that you would need to do a lot of darkness, right, before your mind and body can actually withstand such a great physical transformation from or transmutation. I'd say that's, more of a transmutation from being kind of human to being, let's say, a werewolf. But I find that, yeah, okay. I'm thinking about a lot of things, but I'm going to formulate the question in my mind still. So I'm going to ask you to carry on then, Dennis, just what you were saying. There's a lot of questions in terms of that. It's like the vampires.
Well,
Do you start?
Let me explain to you what you got to do this in certain ways, okay? What
Right.
you're doing in order to connect up with this darkness, okay? And you got to understand this is a spiritual thing here going on. And it bleeds over into the physical, okay? It has a connection with that. But it is a dark spiritual thing that you accomplish. And you allow a dark spirit inside of you.
Right.
You allow demonic possession. That's what it basically is. That's with the same thing with a werewolf, same thing with some other type of supernatural creatures I won't get into today, but you've got to allow this demonic force, the spirit inside of you in order to instigate this change. You can't do that alone. You and I can sit around all day wishing we could become tigers, and we're not. We're not only tigers just because we wish it. Something else has got it. There's a key to this, okay? And here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing about it. And once you allow this spirit inside of you, it takes control. And guess what this darkness, the spirit of darkness does, Shanti? It connects with the inherent darkness that's already in you.
Right. Exactly.
And it expounds upon that. It blows it up, makes it bigger, it makes it more stronger.
Right.
So that's when we talk about vampires and werewolves, and we say it allows the beast within you to take over.
It makes so much sense, Dennis, because when we're looking at the evil that exists right beneath our feet, as I say, these dark ones will find children that they already know of the right bloodlines, blood groups, whatever it is they're looking for, right? But they then start the trauma and the pain within babies. They start creating that, and blood. I mean, I've spoken to some survivors who were not fed. They were left in their cribs, for example, and left to scream for hours and hours. And then they were fed blood from a bottle. Instead of drinking milk, they were given blood. So these kids are already trained from way beyond. Yeah.
That fear gives the blood a narcotic effect for these guys, okay? And you got to remember something. What is the number one precept of all dark magic, black magic, whatever name you want to call it, satanic stuff? The one precept that they all look for is the sacrifice of human blood, the sacrifice of blood. It calls and asks for the sacrifice of blood. Whatever it be. Now, you remember, on your show, I talked about the Feast of the Wolves. That's a black Sabbath that the werewolves participate in. Well, there is a black Sabbath that the vampires participate in, and it's called the Banquet of Blood. It's a little different than the Feast of Wolves. The wolves eat these children. They take the blood. Of course, the blood's part of it, but they eat these children. The vampires do somewhat differently. Instead of having children as servants at this banquet, they are served as food at this banquet. They are put on tables for the vampires to consume their blood. And yes, they even take a little bit of flesh, but they don't do like the werewolves do. The werewolves will eat you up and probably leave nothing but bones, okay? Vampires don't do that. They take mainly the blood and the power and the soul residue out of you, the very life essence of you. When they not only are they draining your blood, but spiritually, they are draining you of life.
Exactly.
What does the Bible say about blood, Matty? What does the Bible say about blood? The blood is the what? The life.
Of course, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why obviously blood is so important to these guys in the system. And it's always a blood sacrifice or a blood ritual, something to do with blood. I don't know if any of you watched my interview with Jesse yesterday. We were talking about the living buildings. Mm-hmm. It is fascinating, Dennis. And the particular one we did was Biltmore, right? And Biltmore is considered a living building. And what they do is they have what they call on the properties grandfather trees. And these trees are fed blood. Instead of water, they're fed blood, which is from the sacrifices that are done, from the hunts that are done, etc. And obviously there's a lot of evil entities attached. And then the properties, the houses built on these properties are now called living buildings. So they have like these almost poltergeisty things that occur there. So they have breathing walls. Sometimes the walls are breathing. Atrocious things happen. Like in Biltmore, we know that's where the 12-year-old rituals were taking place, right? She was saying, for example, the restaurant at Biltmore now is built on what Gloria Vanderbilt used to have as her taxidermy, call it laboratory, which was not animals, right? So all of this stuff is built on these evil forces that are obviously controlling, and it's done, all of it is done obviously with different types of magic, but blood magic and blood, it starts with the blood. The blood is the most important thing that tree needs to be fed, is blood.
Well, that is very interesting thing that you brought up, because I've run into places like that. I have actually gone into a lot of places where you can still feel this evil influence there, because they have opened gateways and doorways. They have crossed the threshold into darkness. And whenever that happens at a place or a time of this type of activity that is going on, it leaves a dark stain upon the land. It goes that far. And here's the thing you got to remember too also, Shanti, that the demonic loves places of pain, suffering, and death. They love graveyards. I've had a lot of people come say, well, let's go out to the graveyard and look for ghosts. I said, most of the time, the only thing you're going to find in the graveyard are demons. Okay. That's just the way that works. They hang out in graveyards. They hang out in morgues. They hang out in mortuaries. They hang out in churches, because churches have funerals in them, right? They hang out in all these places where death and destruction, battlefields, the list goes on and on. When you open these doorways to darkness and you don't close them properly, and the only way to close some of these spiritual doorways is through the power of faith in God, okay? That's the way you truly, absolutely slam the door shut on these things. But if you leave these doorways open, no wonder it's going to have an effect on the location every time. And the people in that location. And there's a lot of times I've gone into homes where people have actually practiced witchcraft and done stuff like that. And they will turn against it. They turn their backs on it. I don't want to do it anymore. But they've left the influence there. They haven't gotten rid of that influence that still remains there, that they brought forth from the darkness. You've got to open the door. If you open the door, you better know how to shut it. Okay. Right. Because if you don't, you're going to have some problems.
Exactly.
And that's what happens to a lot of people, unfortunately, that play with Ouija boards and do seances. If you don't shut that door properly, you can get into a lot of bad trouble. And darkness is always waiting for doorways and thresholds to cross. It's an opportunist thing. It's looking for an opportunity. And, that's what goes with a lot of these. And we'll talk, maybe in part 2, we'll talk about the vampire cults and all that, because they are very dangerous. The clubs and all that they go to, definitely. That is another aspect of vampirism. But to me, when they have these banquets of blood, and you got to remember something else. Some of the major religions in the world require blood, or talking about blood. Look at the Holy Eucharist. It talks about, take this, drink this wine. It's my blood that I give forth as sacrifice. Jesus was the Lamb of God. We understand that. He had to give his life and his what? Blood. Okay. And God, even with Abraham, required that perfect lamb, unblemished, as a sacrifice of blood to God. That God required blood. Okay, that's the life. the blood is the life. Okay. But God
Yeah.
was good. He didn't require human sacrifice. He never did it. Remember that he had that thing with Isaac, and Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, and God stopped him and said, I wanted to test you. So it's a test. I don't
Yeah.
take human sacrifices. God doesn't do that. He's a good guy. He doesn't take that. But the bad guys, on the other hand, they engage in banquets of blood and feast of wolves and all this other stuff because they're the bad guys. That's what they do. That's I had a guy tell me
No
that one
rules,
time. I
eh?
asked him, why are you so mean? Why are you so evil about these things? He said, well, that's what I do. That's my nature.
Yeah, it's who I am. I don't know another way.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Of course,
Wow.
that's a poor
It's 2
excuse in my
midnight.
book. That's a poor excuse to say I do it because that's my nature. You can change your nature if you want to, okay? Nobody's holding a gun to your head making you do what you're doing. But in another aspect of all this, though, we have to look at is not just the blood and the life, but the control over people. And they've got to control you so that they can unalive you properly and correctly the way they want to do it. So they're always looking for that control. And what I said earlier about making themselves look glamorous to you, making them look, they want you to desire them so they can play upon your desires and use them against you. There are many supernatural beings outside, not just vampires, that can do that. The Fae is one that comes to mind. The fairies are very well known for doing this kind of stuff. And here's another thing. At the banquet of blood, there has been speculation, nobody knows this for sure, that most of these children that they dine upon are Rh negatives. That is the number one supreme blood they supposedly like. That's a delicacy to them. That's sort of like filet mignon, okay? They like that.
That's just
if it's infused with fear.
That's just gross. Dennis, maybe just for those who don't know what the banquet of blood is, and I know we spoke about it in our last conversation, our last interview, maybe just give people a quick overview of what the banquet of blood is.
Well, the banquet of blood is very much like the Feast of the Wolves. Now, the Feast of the Wolves, I told you, is the dinner party like, and it seats a coven of 13 people. And each one of these people has a servant, and it's a child, probably usually between the age of 12 and 17, somewhere in that range. And each one of these children are what we call table servants. They stand at the diner, the one who's eating, or at the table participating in the dinner. They stand at his right hand to serve him, whether it be wine or food, hand you a fork or whatever the situation is. That's what table servants do. And there have been table servants since medieval times, and they like that kind of medieval stuff, okay, because it goes back to their early childhood, I guess. Anyway, they like that kind of stuff. And these poor children do not know what they're in for, because when they put the candles out, the feast begins. And the feast does not involve food, okay? It involves human flesh and blood. They eat these children. And the children can't get out of the room. They're screaming and hollering, running around. That's that fear thing, that fear factor. This is extreme torture and death. Okay? To be eaten alive. Think about that a moment. How much there's not much of a more horrible death than you can think about. To be eaten alive. A vampire banquet of blood is somewhat different. They're under the control of the vampires. They're put on the tables as the dinner, as the feast itself. They feast upon their blood and their life essence. They will taste a little flesh, because these are demonic entities, by the way. They love human flesh, okay, just as well as they do blood. But they love the blood even more, especially being vampires. That's what fuels them. And this young blood infused with fear and under their complete control, it's like a narcotic for them. And they feast on this blood like sharks after chum in the water. That's, have you ever seen sharks do that? It's like a swarm of bees going after something. And that's the way these vampires do at the feast, the banquet of blood. They dine upon these poor children until there's nothing left of them. And then they discard whatever's left of them. And probably if they have, werewolf friends, they may let them eat them too. I mean, it depends on what's going on in the coven itself. But at the head of the table always sits the Baphomet. Lord Satan himself, supposedly, is at the head of the table in the banquet. But that's what the banquet of blood is all about. And I have heard stories of these banquets being, some people have attended these banquets in Hollywood and other places like that. You hear stories about this. These are black Sabbaths that they engage in. This is part of their rituals, part of their holidays that they celebrate. This is how they raise their cone of power. And that's what this whole thing is all about. Satanic, evil, demonic power. And the more power these guys get, the stronger and better they like it. The more negativity they feed off of, the stronger they become. And that's what they're all about, And so they're feeding not only off the physical aspects of us human beings, but off of our spiritual aspects as well, our negativity and all this forth that we're putting forth about that. And that's why we say so much. It's very important for people out there listening today to understand. Do not live in fear. Do not show fear. When you show fear, you become the victim of things like this. If they want that negativity, faith over fear defeats them every time.
Absolutely. It's something they can't understand. And Dennis, why that is, in my opinion, because when you've reached that point of having faith over fear, it means you've understood what love is, right? You understand you are created from God's divine love. These guys, or I don't want to say guys because it makes them sound masculine, and that's not what I'm alluding to at all. But what I'm saying is these creatures of the night are completely devoid of love. They have everything that is to do with anything that is love or light, God's light. It's just darkness. They only know pain. They only know suffering. They only know cruelty. They only know narcissism, sociopathic tendencies, whatever it might be. And it's so true, because when we come in with faith over fear, it means we shine a bright light. Our aura, energy radiates a bright light. And that is something, it's like a deer in the headlights. They want to do that and back off. Exactly what they do. So when that's really what it is. When we go in radiating love, joy, fearlessness, confidence, all these things, they have no idea what that is, and that completely knocks them off their game. They dissolve in that energy. They dissolve in it. They flee from it. Yeah. It's like ticks off a dog. Yeah. When you throw, when a dog is full of fleas or something, and you throw like pour whatever flea, those fleas run, boy. They run. It's the same thing. It's like they run like fleas off a dog.
Well, it's like what the Bible says: resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Okay. He may come back. He always comes back. He comes back, but he's going to run from you. He's going to take off because you are doing something positive there. Remember what I said about these things wanting to hook up with the darkness in you, okay? That inherited sinful part that's in all of us. We are infected by that, by the way. We have an infection of sin in us. One day we will not have that any longer, okay? But until then, we're infected, okay? We have that disease of sin. Darkness wants to hook up with that. But listen to this very closely, folks. If you walk in light and love and faith, then God can connect with the bright part of the light part of you, the good part of you, and shield you against this stuff. Okay. He can put his shield, like that prayer I said at the beginning. That was a prayer of protection. Okay. He puts a shield, not only of his angels around you, but he puts a shield of what again around you? Light and love and faith. That's what activates all these things. If you got that in you, Jesus said it very plainly in the Bible. He said, if your light eye be dark, and no light in it, if your eye be dark, then how great is that darkness? But if you have light in you, how great is that light? You know? And that's what allows the Spirit of God to work in you. If you have that light,
Exactly.
that love, that unconditional love that God shows, and that light that
It's so
God gives
true.
you, and that faith,
It's so
that
true.
activates the Spirit of God in you, and puts that shield around you. The vampires hate that. Okay,
Of course,
the werewolves had that. All these supernatural creatures can't deal with that because you got a
exactly.
shield on you. That's what's going on. They can't see, and that's why we were saying earlier. It's all about the control. They want to control you. There are certain forces in this world, whether they be governmental, or whether they be somebody you're married to, or whatever the situation is, that want to try to control you. Do not put up with that. You are a child of God. You were created free. God is a God of freedom.
Exactly.
You were created free.
Exactly.
Don't ever let anybody put control over you. God doesn't even want that.
It's so true. We're given free will and choice. And it's so true what you say, Dennis, because all of us have that ability to tap into our darkness, right? Because we do have that ability to be dark, most definitely. And that's why, again, when we're looking at these kids that are born into these hierarchy families that are literally taken into the system before they're even born, it's all about pain, suffering, lies, deception, nothing good. And it's like they prepared.
Mm-hmm.
These kids don't know, and it's so hard for them to turn back as adults after that type of initiation into life. I want to call it that. But it's amazing that I've watched survivors over the past 4 or 5 years, and I've watched miracles happen in front of my eyes when people have been exposed to such darkness, and then something in them enables them just to remember whatever it is they need to remember. And then the healing is amazing. It really, really is, There's a lot of that, there's a lot of that. But what I also love is that, sorry,
the
Dennis.
best healer, some of us are born to be healers, definitely to help other people out, okay? But the best healer in the universe is God, because he can do it much better than any of us can, absolutely. And I've seen that happen in many lives, absolutely. And it is a miracle in many ways to see. I have seen people change that I never thought would be able to be changed. But God can do that, not me, not you. Although we try to help heal people, and there's nothing wrong with that. God gives us that talent to do these things, okay? We all have been given talents, but our choice is to use them for right or wrong, for the good or bad intentions. And we have to be careful with that. I agree with you 100%. But the thing about this darkness that gets a hold of people, if you go too far into that darkness, that's what I warn people about, You go too far into it, there ain't no way back. Eventually, it becomes so spiritually mired in this darkness that you don't want to be saved. And here's the bad part about it. You change so completely. You see good for bad and bad for good. You see sweet for bitter and bitter for sweet. It completely turns you opposite. And that's why all these rituals that they do are backwards and sideways to them, because that's the way they want it. They venerate that. What did Aleister Crowley say? His motto for him and his church and his magic: do whatsoever you will. Do whatever you want without the consequences, okay? Do whatever you want to do. That's not good. That's not the freedom we're talking about today. We're talking about the freedom of God-given freedom. That's a different freedom altogether than to do just whatever you want to do to people.
It's interesting because I was recently listening to a podcast, and I think it's been doing the rounds lately, so maybe a few of you guys have also seen it, as this ex Freemason, and he talks about his journey and how he got in and what it really was about for him. And he says, he thought basically what they taught is that hell, if they die, it's no worries. It's just this beautiful place where lots of sex, lots of alcohol, lots of drugs, lots of wine, women, and song, basically. And that's what they thought was hell. Well, nothing bad about that, really. So we'll just carry on doing what we're doing. It's crazy to think how people are brainwashed, right? And again, and I wanted to just say as well, Gurla Nogong put up there Psalm 23 and I think 91, you said. I had it on earlier. And that, again, I'm going to say, for those of you who watched my interviews with Jerry Marzinski, who's worked in the mental health industry, and he's worked in places for the criminally insane, and he will attest to that, because a lot of these schizophrenics schizophrenia is not voices in your head. It's actually entities and attachments that have taken over your body. And that goes right the way through. And he'll tell you, you read these things, Psalm 23. You start talking, you start saying Psalm 23. He says it's like worms being thrown into a hot pan. They cannot deal with that. So Psalm 23 is a big one to use for these entities. Just saying, because that definitely is something that they don't like. It's amazing.
Well, I know without a doubt, Chanty, that the demonic uses mental illness. They get behind it, they utilize it, they love it because they can hide behind it so well. And definitely a lot of these people that are schizophrenic, a lot of these people that have so-called different personalities in them are actually demon possessed. Okay. A lot of that stuff. Now, I'm not saying every one of them. Now, there are definitely a lot of stuff that, out there that are different than that. But I'm saying a good deal of it probably is, because that's the way the demonic works. Okay. And here's the other thing. You know what Catherine Mather said? He was a very famous preacher once upon a time. He said that the power of the devil is that no one will believe in him. I have talked with preachers, so-called ministers, who said they didn't believe in a personal devil. You know what I told them? Well, he believes in you. Okay. No doubt about that.
Exactly.
Yeah. But and he's the one instigating a lot of this stuff. His buddies are into all these things, And I was taught, let me say this. I was taught in law enforcement. Okay. Look at you, Shanty. As a regular person, somewhere in you, there's a murderer waiting. Under the right circumstances, given the right situations, pushed to the brink, you can be a murderer. There's a murderer in you. There's one in me. There's one in everybody. And that's what that darkness is I'm talking about. It's there. You don't ever turn the animal loose in you. Don't feed the beast. Okay. He doesn't need to be fed, because he can overwhelm you very easily. And that's what's happened when you get demonically possessed. And I've studied this for many years. I've been involved in this for now well over half a century. I've seen it happen time after time after together. It begins with layers, very slowly. It doesn't all of a sudden boom, most of the time. Sometimes it will, but most of the time it's slow, a little bit at a time. It works its way into your life and into your personality. That's the way it gets you, okay? And that's the way it operates. So you have to be very careful, what we've always said about opening the doors, the doorways in your life to these things. They're waiting to come in. Yeah, and don't let them in. Don't let them in, because they will destroy you. That's what their number one goal. Listen, just like we're talking about the banquet of blood and the feast of the wolves and all these other black Sabbaths and all this stuff, what is the number one thing at the end of the dinner? You have been destroyed. That's what the whole thing was about, your destruction in the end.
Exactly.
And they have fun doing it. Yeah.
What I want to find out from you, and I know, there are obviously different type of vampires. We've spoken in one of our previous shows about more like the energy type vampires as well, and those are very, very real, right? And an energy vampire is a horrible thing. It might not seem like it's a serious thing, but man, it will suck the living everything out of you if you allow it to.
Well, these people, Shanty, are people, like I said earlier, they have talents. Okay. Like
Yeah,
our friend Jessica, she can remote view. Other people have different talents. God gives you these things. Okay. They don't come out of nowhere. God gives you these things. He gives us the
right.
talents, whether it's to be able to sing or play a musical, and whatever the situation is, whatever the talent is, it's your choice to use it for good or evil. And these people are talented. They have this empathetic thing that they can do. They can either give you good energy, or and lift you up and make and give you light you up with love, or they can touch you with darkness and take from
Mm,
you the very essence of what you
exactly.
are. That's not good. That is malevolent. That's evil in my book, no matter which way you look at it. And these people are what you got to be
Yeah,
very careful of, because they are living human vampires. Okay. And they're not just feed. And some of these people do indulge in bloodletting, by the way. Oh yeah, they like that too. But they are also out for that energy, that life essence that's in you, that God put in you, that made you who you are. That's a living soul. Okay. And that's what
yeah,
these guys are enemies
absolutely.
of. And whenever you look at
Yeah,
the vampire, you got to remember one very important thing about that. No matter if you're in a vampire cult, if you're a demonic vampire, if you're a living human vampire, if you some goth kid playing around with a vampire, whatever the vampire situation is, you are basically, I hate to say it, an enemy of God.
yeah,
You're going against the precepts of light and goodness in this world. You know,
yeah,
and
yeah. I
what
mean,
did Jesus say? Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth,
yeah.
and the life." They're not going the way of the light and the truth and all that. They're going the other way. And so that tells you who you're dealing with. You know?
Well, I really think, the fact that you have to steal someone else's life force so that you can survive,
You get a rush
um,
out of it.
that is, that
It's not,
right
it's
there
not,
is,
it's not, it's like a drug, Chandy. You get a rush
yeah,
out of it. You know, that's what it's
exactly,
all about. They get hooked on it, just like the
exactly.
vampires are hooked on the blood. They get hooked on that. Or I call it the juice, the life juice. Okay, they love that. Like you and I drink orange juice every morning for breakfast. That's what they like. Okay, they're taking the other kind of juice here.
Yeah, what a capalouche. Where's that capalouche? Who can I terrorize?
And let me tell you this,
Wow.
okay? You got to be very careful. You got to be very careful who you let touch you and get
Yeah,
close to you. Some people maybe they want to love you and caress you, but some of them don't. Okay, some of them have some very bad intentions behind what they're doing. You got to be very careful, about this. And people say,
that's
"Well,
so true.
Dennis, you sound paranoid." No, I'm just trying to be careful. Okay, and
Exactly.
that's what we do.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Because you have no idea what, you know, with so many people that I've spoken to over the years, what happens, especially in churches, and especially the amount of corruption that happens in churches, right? A lot of these priests and ministers, whatever they want to call themselves, are really ripe for the picking when it comes to corruption, money, power, that sort of thing. They sell out, and they really
Well,
they
look at the pedophile, okay? And I hate to say that word on podcasts because they don't like that. But look at them a moment. They are a form of vampire, are they not?
yes, absolutely, of course they are
Mhm.
predators. They are just horrible. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. So it absolutely anything that is predatorish, I guess, but that relies on, would a vampire, okay, let's talk about the difference between a predator and a vampire, because if we think about a predator, a lion is a predator, right? For example, you're going to get animals in nature and stuff that are predators. They would obviously need to hunt for their prey.
Well, look at
But
the look at my favorite African animal, the lion. Okay, I love lions. They're one of my favorite all-time animals. Okay,
Yeah,
uh,
mine too.
I don't advise you going to cuddle up with any of them, but I love lions. Okay, but look at the lion. Okay, most of the time, his prey is feeble or young or disabled in some way or old. They're always looking for the what? Perfect victim. Vampires and predators do this. That's how they, operate. Whether they be after children or whether they be after a gazelle, whatever the situation is. And of course, the lion, he's smart. He lets the ladies go out and hunt for him, by the way. And they bring him his food back, and they get out, they drop it and let him eat, and he's the king. Okay. But meanwhile, he's been watching the kids while they were out hunting. Okay, so he has a job too. Okay, but anyway, that's the way the lion operates, and you can't blame him because he's looking for that easy food. That's why McDonald's is so well known everywhere. Okay, it's easy food. Okay, you don't have to go look for it; it's right there on the corner somewhere, easy for you to get, and that's how they make their money. Okay, we always, as human beings and animals, we take the easy path sometimes over the hard path. And that's just the way we think. And I've actually hunted a lot. I've hunted a lot of cryptids on well-known paths in woods because they take those paths too. They're easier than going through the brush, going through the briars and the thorns and all that. It's easier to go down the trail that's already there. And that's why animals make trails in the forest, too, by the way, folks. They make trails, okay? If you turn your dog loose in the forest, he's going to hit the trail most of the time, okay? Unless he smells a rabbit or something in the bush. The whole thing is, that's just the way we think. We go for the easy thing. And that's what the predator's looking for, the easy thing. And I say that's why we don't want to appear, even if we're not. We don't want to appear as a victim. We want to walk with confidence, head high, looking you right in the eye, daring you to do something. They don't want to mess with you, But if you walk out there holding your pocketbook, and you're scared of everything looking around, oh boy, they're going to zero in right on you because you're a victim waiting to happen.
Of course.
I was taught this in law enforcement. I talked to a lot of women about this. Be very careful. The most vulnerable place you can go will not be out in the jungle. It won't be out in the park. It'll be in a parking lot. Okay? That's the way the modern day predators work. It's not the jungle anymore that you got to worry about. It's the parking lot at Walmart and all these other places that you go to. You better be aware of your surroundings and make sure that you don't appear as a victim, even if you're not, So that's why I've said so many times, and I'm thinking about having this put on my tombstone, okay? Okay, here's the thing about it. Evil wants you as a victim.
Does.
Simply because it fears you as a warrior.
Exactly. And if we're looking at McDonald's here especially now, I think there's sufficient evidence to know what McDonald's puts in their meat, right? It's not coming from the cow. We're going to leave it right there. So they make it easy. They make it quick. And if you look at who owns McDonald's, I'll tell you no, not my president. Oh, no. Yeah, the guy here in South Africa, I call him Ramanokio because he's such a liar. Ramaphosa. He owns 100 and something, is it 64, 74 something McDonald's here in South Africa. And he's a complete puppet. So when we're looking at how they're orchestrating these things and who in fact owns them or is controlling this, right? We got to know what's in there. And I know we've spoken often again with Jesse on the shows about there really being human meat in McDonald's.
Well, there's a joke about McDonald's in India. It only serves veggie burgers. Okay, You know, but I don't think it's real meat in the hamburgers myself. I don't know what it is, but I don't know if it's real. But anyway, that's their business though. And, you know, and I worked at a hospital for 30 years, and there's some people out there that's worked in the medical profession know what I'm talking about. The very first day I was hired on, they said, "Look, okay, this is a hospital, but we're just a business like any other business. It's all about the money." Okay,
Of
that's
course
what
it
it's
is.
all
It's
comes down
always
to.
about the money. It's always
Yeah.
about the money. And I mean, if we're looking really talking about energy vampires, who vamps off us more than our own government? Really? All of us, all of our governments, they are just big fat vampires sucking off the people. They need our votes so that they can stay in power, and continue to control the masses and continue to lie and deceive. And really, it's like you see all of the promises made, for example, just before an election. I think that's standard in every country. Over here, oh my gosh, it's a joke. It really is a joke. Anyway, but what I wanted to ask you, you know, just when we're looking at the more physical vampire as well, in what I've seen, you know, my parents never allowed me to watch horror movies. So I never saw saw movies about these things much as a kid at all. But of course, I knew what Dracula was, and I knew what a werewolf was, and I knew what vampires were. But we see a vampire as this guy that oftentimes will walk around in a long coat, has two long fangs coming out of his mouth, and bites his victims, usually a girl he's met somewhere, right? And he's charmed her, and bites her on the jugular and sucks her blood. And then she too becomes a vampire. That's kind of like the narrative I grew up with, right? So I know there are many different types of vampires. And I know we're going to talk about also, like we were talking about Johnny Depp earlier on. That's another type of vampire completely. But are there those that actually bite you on the throat? And might sound like a weird question, but really, do they exist?
Well, the interesting thing about this, when you become a vampire supernaturally, it gives you longer life, but there's a price to pay for that. And, you know, it's always what we say about the devil. He wants you to sign the contract and tells you to ignore the fine printing on it. Okay, don't read it. Don't read it all. Okay, just sign. And they don't understand what they're signing up for a lot of times. But I think a lot of these, and I think there's a good many of these Hollywood so-called stars that are involved in this stuff, and it includes sports stars, media people, politicians. The list goes on and on, because the demonic is in every aspect of our lives, whether we realize it or not. And I've had people, and I've been accused of, you know, my people over the years, "Oh, Dennis, you're all about demons. Everything's demon." No, not everything's demonic. There's a lot of things out there that are not demonic. But the demonic card is the one you got to play. It is there on the table. Don't ignore it, to your own danger if you do ignore it, because it is a very viable card and sometimes has to be played whether you want to play it or not. But I think without a doubt, when you acquire this vampire power that you get, and it is all about control, that's why Hollywood took the vampire and made it sexy looking. You know, it's a lot of these Brad Pitt thing and all this stuff, you know, the interview with the vampire and all this other stuff. They make it sexy looking because what? Some people think control over other people is what? Darn sexy. Okay. They like that. They call it an animal thing, you know. And sex sells, by the way. Okay. We know that. It makes money, definitely. And that was perfect thing for Hollywood, okay. But they don't look at the evil aspects of what all this is like they do. They kind of brush that aside. But if you become a being like this, and you give yourself over completely to the darkness, you have lost your human soul, no matter which way you look at it. Whether you sign a contract or not, it's gone. Your soul. And what should it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose your own soul? You know, and that's a bad situation to be in. A lot of these people, if you look in their eyes, Shanty, there's nothing there. It's just dark. You know, it's just emotionless. It's soulless. It's that soulless look. And I've seen that in a lot of people, unfortunately, more than I care to. You see that looking back at you. And that is extreme darkness and evil. You see it in the eyes of
Exactly.
serial killers. You see it in the eyes of people that have lost everything and no longer have any hope of anything like that. These people are spiritually bereft of these things. They've gone completely over that line into the never never. Okay, they usually don't come back, but they don't realize what the true price for this immortality is. And I'm going to be talking about on my show tomorrow night. The Nephilim, they were all about this immortality. They want to walk this world as gods, and it doesn't matter to them if they are gods of darkness. Okay, that's the way they're going to go. That's the way they're going to go. That's the only way they can get it. But there is a price for all of this stuff, no matter which way you look at it. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick story of a vampire, one of the vampires I ran into, and this was many years ago. Now, I told the story the other day about shaking hands with a reptilian. I don't know if you heard about this, but I met this guy. He worked for Raytheon. I was working at the hospital at this time, and I never had met this guy before, and then was introduced to him. So I shook, like all men do, I shook hands with him. I shook his hand, and I noticed there was something off about this guy. It's just something I picked up, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. But when I shook hands, I looked down, Shanty, and for just a moment, I saw that I was not shaking hands with a human. It was reptilian looking. It had scales. It was not a bright green, it was a dark green looking. And it had nails, which I could only call claws, long black claws like. And I was shaking hands with this. And I looked up at the guy. And he was like, there was a strange look on his face, like, you can see that kind of look. He was surprised, look, like, you see that. And I looked back down and we broke contact. I looked back down and the hand was normal. And that guy made an excuse and walked away. He got out of there real quick. Because I think he really picked up on the fact that I saw what he really was. For just a moment. That mask slipped. You know what I'm saying? And I think this happens a lot of times, and we need to open our eyes more spiritually to these things. We need to acquire this discernment that we've talked about so many times to be able to have those scales fall off our eyes to see what's really going on around us. Okay, as
Exactly.
a law enforcement officer, I was taught that. That's the number one rule of law enforcement: observe everything. Okay.
Yeah.
But that, I'm going to tell you
Wow.
what, I had a fallout from that. I learned a lesson the hard way. You don't shake everybody's hand, okay? And I was very cautious after this happened to me because I got a bad fallout from this. I got a bad spiritual fallout from this. It took me several days to get over it because it's sort of like, and I call it kind of like bruising your spirit. You've taken a hit, a punch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why I caution people, be careful who you touch or who you let touch you. I found out the hard way that it don't work.
Do you think he was aware that he was a vampire? Because I think, in my experience, not everyone is aware that they are these creatures. Yes, they might be creepy and do.
I think he knew by his expression, the expression on his face. I think he knew he knows what he is. And I think it was reptilian more than vampire, really, in that respect, because that's what it looked like to me. That moment, this brief moment I saw that's the impression I got. And it was dry. It was not cold and clammy, but it was kind of just dry. Like, if you've ever handled a snake, you know what I'm talking about. That's the way it felt.
Yeah.
And that's the impression I got. Like I just got, I got a handful of snake here for some reason. That was my impression. And but now the girl I ran into in the graveyard, I call it the girl in the graveyard. And this was back many years ago. And I was in the town of Charleston, South Carolina, which is a very old city on the coast of South Carolina. I've investigated many times there. I've done a lot of historical and paranormal investigation. It is one of the most haunted cities in the world. Okay. Charleston goes way back. And I was in Charleston in a cemetery. There are two big cemeteries downtown, two churchyards. And I was in one of them, and I was looking around that day, okay? I'm going to make this a quick story for you. I was looking around for one of the signers of the declaration. It was a historical thing. I had nothing on my mind absolutely at all about vampires or anything like that, you know, just because I've been in 1,000 graveyards, okay? And they are like history books in many ways to read the tombstones and people's lives. And very interesting to me. I like graveyards. They're nice, quiet, and peaceful places, okay? Anyway, I'm looking around, you know, and I hear a voice behind me. And it's a young girl. She says, "You like graveyards?" She asked me that question. So I turned around and there's this girl there. She's probably maybe 2 feet away from me. She's pretty close to me. And she's real pretty. She's got sort of she had hair kind of about like the color of your hair, and maybe a little bit lighter. And it was long. She had long hair, but I'm also down to the hips, but it was shoulder length. And you know, and I'm observing all this, you know, because I've been trained to do that. Always observe everything. And I noticed right off what struck me as strange, that she had on a mixture of old and new clothes. Like she had on, I think you call it a camisole. She had on like a camisole that
Yes.
looked very old, kind of old, like the 1890s or something, you know, kind of a thing. But then she had on like a new kind of looking frock, like, you know, dress. And I don't remember the shoes because I didn't really look down. I was looking at her face, you know. I wasn't, you know, looking her all over, which would have been rude, you know. But I was kind of looking at her face. You know, I like to look at people in the eyes, you know. I like to look them in the eyes when I'm talking to somebody, because the eyes truly are the windows of the soul. But you got to be careful about that too. You got to be careful about that connection. But I'm looking at her. She's real pretty. She's probably around 25 years old, something like that. And I said, yeah, I love graveyards. You know, I like to check them out. They're very interesting places, you know. And she said, I do too. I practically live here. I said, you do? I thought that, you know, I'm beginning to pick up some kind of weird vibes here. Okay. I'm beginning to kind of feel a little
bit of a deathly vibe.
Well, she put out her hand. She said, my name is, I can't remember what the name was, Emily Jane or something. It was a 2-name hyphen name. Okay. And said, my name is so-and-so. And I shook her hand. And honest to God, I will tell you this. I have touched a lot of dead people in my time, and this was like shaking hands with a corpse. Okay.
I was going to say that feeling.
And I'm serious. It was cold, and this was on a fall day, but it was a warm day. You know, in the South, it stays pretty warm in the fall. And it was late in the day, but it wasn't twilight or nothing. It was a cloudy day. Like, I remember the day well. And I shook her hand, and that's when I really get the weird vibes. You know, I said, something wrong with this gal. Okay. This is not normal. You know, that's, you know, and I said, well, that's interesting. I said, are you interested in graveyards too, reading all of them? She said, no, I'm buried here. I was buried here. And I said, what do you mean you were buried here? And she said, well, I was buried here. She said, I'm a vampire. I said, really? You don't look like a vampire. Something like that I said to her, you know. And she said, oh, yeah, I'm like, 200 years old. And I forget exactly. It's like 197 years old, something like that. And I said, well, that's very interesting. I'm beginning to think, hey, boy, I got a real live one here, you know. I made very weird stuff. So I said, and I kind of brushed that off. And I said, are you like, in one of these vampire societies, you know? And she said, oh, no, I'm a real vampire. You know, and I said, oh, well, that's very interesting.
Wow.
I was standing close enough to her. Let me tell you this, and this is the impression I got. I was like 2 feet from her. I never felt her breathing on me, okay? And I never felt any warmth off of her body. It was like there was nothing there. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah.
You pick up on that, somebody breathing on you. I mean, she was that close to me. I could have reached out and caressed her face. That's how close she was to me. And she was very nice. She wasn't threatening or anything, She wasn't, But I got this very weird feeling, I got the heebie-jeebies. The hair goes on the back of my neck, and I'm going, this is not right here, So I'm wanting to try to get away from this girl, okay? Whether she's wacko or whatever's going on here, I need to get out of here, okay? So I kind of turned and looked down at a tombstone, and yeah, well, let me back up a moment. I did say one more thing too. I said, if you're a real vampire, what are you doing out in daytime? I remember asking her that. She said, "Oh, we can come out in daytime." She said, "That's not true. We can come out in daytime, but we like the night better. We are stronger at night." She said, "But on a day like today, we can come out, no problem." And I said, "Oh, that's very interesting." So I think it's time for me to leave. So I kind of looked down at the tombstone. I looked back up, and she is gone. She is completely gone, and I can see through this whole cemetery. There's nowhere for her to go. There was some people way back over in a corner back there. I don't think they even noticed noticed me there. She was not with them. She was not over there. I looked, I started looking. Well, where did she go? And I said, is she hiding down behind a tombstone? I start looking around. There's no way that quickly she could have gotten gone out of my sight. And I'm going to let
she ghosted you, Dennis. She ghosted you.
Heck just happened here, and here's the thing I got to tell you. I'm standing there looking. I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, and I look up in the trees, Shanty, and flying through the trees was one of the biggest bats I've ever seen. And I'm talking about the size of a hawk, maybe. Big bat flying through the trees. And I'm going, nobody ever going to believe this. There's a bat flying through here in the daytime, And I'm thinking, was that her leaving or what? That was a weird thing. But I remember, this bothered me immensely. And like I say, I began to get the fallout from shaking hands with this gal, okay? And I'm beginning to feel, I'm picking up on this very badly. So I went back the next day and I found a tombstone with her name on it.
Wow. Now, why do you think she would have become a vampire? Why do you think after being buried, do you think she would have been into vampirism or witchcraft before she died, which is why her soul is still continuing on that path? Or do you think that she, I don't know, took a wrong road after she died? How does that actually work?
Well, I think we got to understand exactly the different types of vampires to pick up on what you're seeing. And by the way, I have a feeling, I don't know why, that I will see this girl again one day, okay? And she'll probably look the same. Although it's been maybe 30 years ago, she'll probably look the same when I see her. Anyway, I just got a feeling I will see her again one day. But you got to understand the different types of vampires. When it comes to, there is a vampire that is a demonically reanimated dead body, okay? It has a demon spirit in it, but it is a dead body. It's okay. Let's say if you were to die and your spirit leaves your body, and a vampire using necromancy, which is some of the darkest magic there is,
right,
using that can inhabit your shell with another spirit, a demonic spirit, and rise up as a vampire that way, okay? Now, you may not go around sucking blood out of people to a certain extent. Maybe an energy type vampire, taking life essence out of people, or taking their breath out of them. How you operate. You remember I told you on the last show we did about the vampire skinwalker called, the boo hag.
Yes.
It operates that way. It draws out your breath, your essence. You may use that, or you may go after blood. It depends on what kind of a demon spirit you are. Okay, and then you've got another kind of vampire. And that is a true demonic vampire. It is more of a spiritual being than a body thing. It casts no shadow. Demons, real demons, cast no shadows. Any witch doctor will tell you that. They do not cast a shadow because they are not in our reality, okay, per se. Although we can see them, they can affect us. They're still not phasing in our reality to become physical, okay? Okay, and that's why you don't see them in the mirror. There's nothing there. That's why I got that funky feeling off of that girl. There was nothing there. I shook hands with nothing, but yet it felt like, I could feel it, but it wasn't, like a living thing. in that respect. And demons, including vampire demons, have no they cast no shadow. And that may be why they have no reflection. But now, this type of a vampire, and I've run into a lot of them, this can appear either as a physical form or just a spirit. You won't be able to see it. It can appear either way. Okay. But that is a demonic vampire, per se, in that sense. So it's
Right.
not a reanimated corpse. It's a demonic
Right.
vampire. Now you've
How
got
long?
the true vampire. Listen to this one. Okay. This is another kind of vampire. This is a mean, evil, and malignant person. This is evil as you get. It probably is demon possessed when they die, whatever the situation is. They can come back sometimes as a vampire. You ever heard that old expression, evil never dies?
Yeah, of course.
Evil is very hard to kill. Okay, trust me, I know it without a doubt. Evil is very hard to kill. This type of evil can be returning, but they usually return to harass members of their family or their neighbors. Okay. So they're not, going to Boston. They're not going to London. They're not going to nowhere. They usually hang out in that neighborhood. Okay. But these malignant people that will become vampires, supposedly become vampires in different ways. You can do something against the church, or you can commit suicide. There are different things you can do to sort of break the laws of God to become a vampire. You sort of like a vampire curse. Okay.
Right.
In that respect. But these people, even now I'm going to tell you a quick story that I ran into another vampire. Vampires I've known. Okay. I had a young girl come to me. This has been maybe about 10 years ago. This real pretty young girl, she wanted to meet me. She met me at a restaurant, and she said, Dr. Carroll, I saw you on television. I've been on television a few times. So I thought, my friend told me about you. Said and I watched you on television and said, I need your help. Okay. And, I think the one that can help me. And I said, well, I'll do what I can, And she said, well, here's my story. My mother and I never got along. My mother was a mean, hateful, malevolent, evil person, controlling person, narcissistic to the max. She was just downright brutal. She hated me. Although she was my mother, she seemed to hate me more than anybody else in the family. We never got along, And said that she said, I didn't hate my mother. I want you to tell you that right now. I didn't hate my mother, but I couldn't understand her. I couldn't understand why she did the things that she did and why she won't seem to hate me, And that's pretty bad to say about your own mother when you think about it, Mothers are not supposed to be like that. So anyway, she said, my mother got cancer a couple of years ago, and she come to stay with me. And said, my mother, she never changed. She's always just mean. And since like she got worse when she got cancer. Okay. And this was, of course, a very fast acting kind of cancer that was going to take her out. Okay. Take her out pretty quick. And she said, I tried to, make my mother's last days comfortable. I do everything I could for her, be there. But she was just this way, She said, my mother had one request and one thing she asked of me. She said, my mother hated me. She hated the world. She hated everything. She was just mean and evil. She said she requested that she be buried in this white dress that her mother had. It was a very satin kind of dress. It was her mother's favorite dress. It was almost like a wedding dress, She might have used it as a wedding dress. I don't know. But it was sort of like that. And she said, my mother requested to be buried in that. She said, if you do anything, bury me in that. She said, I promise, Mother, I'll do that. And she said, I kept my promise. When my mother passed away, I had her buried in that dress. And she said, now I've got a problem. And I said, and that's why I'm talking to you. And I said, well, what's the problem? She said, my mother is coming back. My mother comes back every night. We buried her 2 weeks ago, and every night since then, she's come back to me in my dreams, wearing that white dress. And says she's not acting like my mother. She's like hugging on me, going around my neck, cuddling up to me, trying to get close to me. She said, and it's driving me crazy. I keep dreaming this. It's the same dream. She comes into the room and starts, pawing me like this and trying to get close to me. And it's not like she's my real mother. She's something else, And she said,
Wow.
She said, Dr. Carroll, I believe my mother is a vampire or something. She's coming back like this. And I said, well, this is not good. And she said, here's one more thing I want to show you. And she said, I found this in my room the other day. This looks like a piece off of that white dress that I buried in. And said, this was not in my room. I don't know where this comes from. She said, I don't know if it is off of that dress, but it looks like it. I've got it around here somewhere. I still got it. She gave it to me. She said, I don't want to keep it. I don't want it around me anymore. And so it was just a small piece, like, would have torn off of a dress or something, off the hem of a dress or something. That's what it kind of looked like to me.
Yeah, but
anyway, I said, well, this is not good. I said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you. Okay. And she told me where mother was buried. Her mother was buried in a vault. Okay. In a tomb, a sepulcher. So my mother was buried there with other people. And I said, I will watch this grave for 7 nights. According to folklore, 7 nights. Within 7 nights, a vampire is supposed to come back. Okay. Or you're supposed to be able to see him. So I said, for the next 7 nights, and no pun intended, I'll stake out this cemetery, okay? I'll stake it out and watch for your mother. And then I said, if she is coming back, we may have to do something, okay? I was prepared to do what you need to do to put a vampire down, okay? I was prepared for that. So for 7 long nights, all alone in the cemetery, I watched this grave, okay? I watched this sepulcher. And I think about the 4th or 5th night, I saw something white moving out among the tombstones. Well, I immediately got my flashlight. Of course, I was armed. You never go anywhere unarmed. And I walked out in this cemetery. It's late, like 4 o'clock in the morning, And sure enough, there is something out there. There's a great big white dog. And it's about a white German Shepherd. And usually, I'm an animal person. Animals come up to me. They take to me pretty quick, But this dog acted very strange. He just sat there staring at me. He just stopped. When I walked up, he just stopped, sat down, and stared at me. He made me look. You know how dogs turn their head at you? Looking at me. I'm going, this is not good either. I don't know what's going on here. I never would have thought a vampire would come back looking like a dog if that's what's going on, So I walked away. But I'm just telling that because it happened. Whether that was connected or not, I don't know. But it was a very strange incident. But nothing happened. Wow. So I went back to, I called the girl. I said, look, I haven't seen your mother. I haven't seen anything like that going on. I've been watching this tombstone. But I said, there's one more thing I'm going to do if I've got your permission to do it. It may solve your problem. And she said, I don't care what it is. Do it. So I go back to the tomb in daytime, okay? I go back to the tomb and I take this blessed chalk that I have. Blessed chalk. And I draw a cross on her tomb. And I say a prayer, and I call her by name. I forget her name, but I think her name was Sylvine. And I said, Sylvine, you need to go on to the light. You don't need to stay here anymore and bother anybody, okay? There's no place on this planet left for you. There's nowhere left for you to be here. You need to go away. You need to go on where you need to go. And not bother about come back on anybody. Leave people alone and go on. Your time here is over. Okay. So I said another prayer, put holy water on the tomb, and I left. Okay. I get a call about 3 days later from the girl. And she said, what did you do? And I said, well, I did what had to be done. I didn't tell her, exactly what I said, but I did what had to be done. She said, my mother has not come back in a dream to me ever since I talked to you.
Wow.
She hasn't come back. I said, well,
wow.
Maybe she won't. So I never heard back from her anymore. So I figured that was the end of that vampire.
Wow, that's amazing. So, as you said, she went into the light, finally found her peace.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Dennis. That's incredible. Wow, Dennis, what incredible stories you sharing with us. I know that we're going to be doing future shows. Sound like I've been drinking too much wine. I haven't, I promise. Future shows where we're going to be talking more about that. And also, I'm just looking at here. We could also with the RH negative blood. I think that would be fascinating to look into as well, because that is obviously what they're after as well. Is very much that. So looking forward to that. I'm not sure if there's anything still that you want to share with us this evening. Well, morning for you, I guess. Before we end off the show, is there anything else you want to share with us about any more
Well, just
experiences?
tell everybody. Maybe we save some of the other stuff for part two, maybe. But I just want to make stress to everybody. Don't live in fear. That's the main thing, and do not show fear. Do not operate in fear. Walk in light, love, and faith. And that will defeat these things out there. It will keep them away from you. It will put
Absolutely.
that shield around you. That's the most important thing. That shield will be there to protect you. Because this is not just a physical thing that we're talking about, but it is a spiritual darkness as well. And we have to be
Spiritual.
very careful how we
Absolutely.
allow these things to operate in our lives. Absolutely.
Dennis, are you a country singer? I could not resist that. Not quite. There's actually just two. Excuse me, guys. I've still got a cough, so while I'm sputtering away here, forgive me. Just two questions I wanted to ask you, Dennis, and the one is from Leanne that
Sure.
she popped up early on, which was, why don't lichens and vampires get along? Now, a lichen is a werewolf, right? It's a transmuted werewolf, as far as I know. Is that right?
Well, they are actually Hollywood made them out to be enemies, but I think they cooperate more than we really truly realize because they are both coming from the same demonic power source. Okay. And here's the interesting thing about demons, and I've run into a lot of them in my time. They hate each other completely. They hate everything. Just like that poor woman I was talking about. They hate the world. They hate everything in it. They hate each other. But yet, they know that a house divided cannot stand. They cooperate because they have a common goal. So it's kind of a fallacy that werewolves and vampires don't get along. It's not true. Although there are different aspects to that, mainly they're coming from the same, shall we say, situation.
Right. Absolutely. I would say yes, but we know that, it's interesting. I always say, like, when we operate and work within the light of God, like, let's say there's a team of us working together and we all understand what we're doing. It doesn't mean we don't necessarily don't compete with each other, right? It doesn't mean that we necessarily don't always get along 100%, right? But we generally hold each other in high regard. We support each other. We work through challenges so that we can do things together as a community. But on the other end, when we're looking at the guys in the creatures of the night that step out of their manholes when everyone is sleeping, it's all about distraction. It's all about segregation. And mostly they don't like each other at all. They're keeping each other's secrets. So they kind of resent that, I would imagine, that the other person knows all this stuff about them. But it's really divide and conquer, I think, a lot of the time. And then, Dennis, just the other question that I had here from Midwest Night Watchers. Why do movies always show brides of Dracula in white flowing gowns? I have that question too.
Well, I think it's Hollywood there again. If you were to actually see a vampire, the clothes they would be wearing or what they buried in, it would probably be very messy. And that's kind of like the girl I talked about in the graveyard. The interesting thing about her, she was wearing half old fashioned and half new. Maybe she had to go out and get some new stuff, okay? Because clothes don't hold up good in the grave, okay, after a while. Things do get rotten. Even if you don't rot, your clothes may. But that is an interesting aspect of it too. But that's Hollywood. Like I said, we've got to disassociate ourselves from Hollywood. Although they've done a lot of their research, they glamorize it. They extrapolate it. I think the word is they they go out of the way to make it more dramatic when it's not necessarily that way. If you were to run into an actual vampire straight out of the grave, it would not be a pretty sight. Put it that way.
I wanted to ask you early on as well, how long can they use one of those recently deceased corpses? Surely there's a time limit that body can be used, that they're stealing corpses out of the coffins.
Well, yeah, you can also, though, you got to remember the demonic power uses the glamour. They can make that dead body look pretty good and pass in public, probably, if they need to. But the one thing that does tend to give it away is the smell. Absolutely. That would, I think would be a dead giveaway. And like I said with that handshake I did, sooner or later the mask is going to slip. I think in order for them to shift and do this glamour thing on you, takes a lot of their power and energy to do it. And eventually, that's why I don't think they want to hang around you long, or like some of these stars stay on the red carpet long, or whatever the situation is, because they can't hold that shape very long to a certain extent. The higher up you go in the witchcraft ladder, the more demonic power you get, the more you can maintain that. Okay, the more power you get from it. But I think it's a hard thing to do. And it has to be excruciatingly painful to do it, by the way, to turn into something else. It's not pleasant. It's not a pleasant thing. So they just don't do it a lot of times as a drop of a hat. So a lot of this stuff they may be using not just black magic, but they could be using a dark science to do some of this with as well. Shadow science, I call it. And we need to do a show on that one day because that's a fascinating subject. It is a demonic science and a shadow science. It is angelic. It is fallen angel stuff. Okay.
Oh, I want to hear about that. We can do that as an extra, actually.
Celestial technology.
Wow. Very interesting. And I was actually from Bounty Hunting Bear. After they advance more vampires and werewolves, can they become the other? A vamp be a wolf or vice versa?
Mm-hmm. You can become a werewolf or a vampire. You can switch. You can become a big black cat. You can become a crow, a coyote, or a wolf, whatever the situation is. But like I say, the change has to be excruciatingly painful in certain ways. Bones are cracking, skin's peeling. It's not probably a very pleasant, pretty sight. It is something involved in dark, painful stuff. The demonic loves painful stuff. They love torture and death, blood, and all this other stuff, gore. That's why I think a lot of these bad spirits are attached to some of these horror movies and games. The more gore and blood in it, you definitely know that you're in the territory of the demonic.
Exactly. That's just so creepy, man. Wow. Sure. Anyway, Dennis, I'm happy we have you to tell us about these things. Right, everybody? Wow. It is a fascinating topic, and it makes me think about that movie. One of the few, told you, my mother would never let us watch horror movies and things, and I was born in the 60s, so I didn't even have TV until I was like, I think TV only came here when I was 10. And my father, because we lived on the farm, we only got a TV on the farm when I was like 17 or 16. So I'm not used to, like, obviously this sort of stuff other than what we read in books, right? But the one of the movies that I've only ever seen this in is Men in Black. And it reminds me of that guy. I can't even remember, but he was that big one, and he'd taken someone else's dead body and was kind of roaming around in this dead body. And after a few days, this thing started having the left eye drop, and you know what I'm saying? The whole face started falling apart. It was actually insane. And, one would think, how does that actually happen? And now when we're hearing these stories, that's really what they do. That is what they're doing. I mean, that's just like creepy, man.
That's kind of like the boo hag I talked about the other day. When she wears your skin out, she goes looking for some more skin to put on. When the thing wears that body out, it will go looking for another body. This is the darkest part of black witchcraft and magic is necromancy. Necromancy is
Yes.
raising the dead up, using the dead for certain things. It is the supreme dark power of witchcraft, necromancy, and demonic reanimated dead things walking around is not a good, pleasant thing to think about. But it has been happening. Like that story I told you about what happened during Katrina and that body they found in that house hanging on a wall, which was pretty well gone. The body was well gone. I mean, it was, deteriorated, but yet the thing still raised his head up and laughed at him. It was hanging on that wall. I scared them to death. That's the power of voodoo. That's necromancy. They probably had that thing hanging up, getting some kind of knowledge out of it, or using it for divination. You got to work. You got to be very careful about this divination stuff. Whether it be, trying to find out different things with cards or whatever. Be very, very careful because the darkness loves that kind of stuff and utilizes the Ouija boards, the seances, and all that. Believe me, I have participated in seances, which I'm sorry to say I shouldn't have done, but I have done that, and it is not a good thing at all. It is a very unpleasant thing. I mean, especially when they turn out bad, and I mean very bad. I can tell you some stories about that sometime. But anyway, we have to understand the darkness is always waiting to use something against us. It's always waiting to, turn the tables on us. And those tables do turn, my friends, definitely.
Yeah, they do.
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely do. It's really, at the end of the day, it's all about cause and effect. At some point, you're going to get back what you've put out there. Might not be tomorrow. It might not be next week. But it's going to come back. It's gonna come back.
Oh yeah, wow. A lot of people come to me over the years say, "Oh, my life's so terrible. I think God's cursed on me. I use all these drugs. I get drunk every night and all that stuff." And I said, "Well, what do you expect? You're putting out negativity. You're going to get negativity back. That's just the way that goes. If you put out light and love, I'm going to tell you, I got a secret for you. Okay, if you put out light and love and faith, guess what you're probably going to get back? Light, love, and faith. Okay? That's the way that works. And this is the universal law. Okay?
Exactly. It's beautiful like that because when you have faith, you automatically, it's like the people who also have faith and who you can have faith in appear in your life. It's a beautiful thing. And, that you have, that like anything, work, career, money, anything. If you decide that if you're a generous person, you're going to meet generous people and you are going to have someone be extremely generous to you at a time that you really need it. This is how it works. And, when we don't expect anything back from people, we give unconditionally. Don't give if you can't afford to give. Don't give if you're resenting. It's the worst time to give is when you're having resentment. Give because you want to. Give because you choose to, not because you have to. If you're doing something because you feel you have to, you are actually going against your own happiness. You're actually deceiving yourself. Don't do that. Just do what you need to do with love, openness in your heart.
That's what I put out the other day. Okay, that's what I put on Facebook the other day. My job is not. I don't judge you. I only judge myself. My job is not to judge you for anything. Okay, my job is to try to love you as unconditionally as possible. That's my job.
Absolutely.
That should be the job of every human being. By the way, if we would take that job upon us, what a better world it would be. But that, even Jesus said that in the Bible. He said, "I have not come to judge and condemn the world. I've come to save it."
Exactly. And it's really about love, learning to love. Life on earth is learning to love. Learning to love yourself first in the way that God sees you. Because if you can see yourself in the way that God sees you, you have no option but to love yourself. And most of us don't even like ourselves, let alone love ourselves. We hurt ourselves so much without even realizing we're doing it. So that would be the first thing, is just to realize you are created from love. No matter what has happened in your life, that love still exists inside of you
I've
from
had a lot of
God.
people say that to me over the years, Shanty. I've done this, I've done that. I can't forgive myself. I said, you got to forgive yourself. You've got to
Yeah,
heal and try to heal and forgive yourself, or allow yourself to be healed. Because if you can't forgive yourself, God can't forgive you. You're impeding God from doing what He needs to do. Don't do that.
exactly.
Don't stand in God's way.
God is already, this is what we must realize. God has already forgiven us. Forgiveness is there. We have to receive it. We have to put out, and it's exactly what you're saying. God cannot show us how forgiveness,
But you got to
what
forgive yourself
forgiveness
too.
is.
You need to
Exactly.
forgive yourself.
But that's what I'm saying. Until you've allowed yourself to accept that forgiveness and be okay with correcting or making your wrongs right, okay? God cannot actually give you that healing balm where you can then go, thank you, God, and walk the path of truth. And it's always about truth. It's always, the devil is the lie, God is the truth. If there's a choice between telling a lie or telling the truth, always know that the truth is God, the lie is the devil. Simple as that.
That's what the number one thing Jesus also said. I have come to set the captive free.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. Dennis, I say thank you so much for a fantastic show. And I look forward to, it looks like we'll discuss what we're going to do. I want to maybe do the whole shadow science thing next week, but we can chat about it. So everybody watch the space, and then we will definitely have Dr. Dennis back on again, our amazing expert when it comes to werewolves, vampires, cryptids, anything paranormal. You're a wealth of information, Dennis. So thank you again for all your information that you're giving us. And I just want to know, is there anything you perhaps have to say just to round it all up? And what's happening with you in the next few days? Where are you at? Where can people get hold of you? I'll put your banner up in the meantime.
Well, tomorrow night at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, on Paranormal Point of View, I will be talking about the Nephilim, the plan that they have for mankind. You don't want to miss this, and it's going to be great. And that's always a very interesting subject. And Monday, with my good friend Gerald Fountain, we will be going down the road less traveled and looking for haunted highways. That's at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the road less traveled. And you can reach me at denniswcarroll.com. My books are available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I am also a paranormal consultant. If you need any kind to talk to me about any kind of paranormal problem, demonical or otherwise, you can get in touch with me on the website, denniswcarroll.com. And I think that's it. One more thing. I will say this right quick. Definitely there is a science in this world, and it is a man-made science, but there's another kind of science as well, and that's what we need to talk about one day. Definitely the shadow science. Fascinating subject.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one I got top of my list, Dr. Dennis. Yay. Okay. Well, Dennis, would you maybe like just to end off for us in prayer, please?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we humble ourselves before you today. We ask for your peace protection, and I ask that you will touch every single person listening and watching this program today, that you will place your hand upon them and upon their lives, upon their finances, upon their families, upon all of their endeavors. We ask that you will open the windows and doors of heaven and give them such a blessing that they cannot contain it all. We ask that you will do this and give them charge over your holy angels, charge over them to keep them in all their ways, to protect them and put that shield of light, love, and faith around them. We ask that you do this in the one name to which all power is given in heaven and earth. In the name of Jesus Christ and by the blood of Jesus Christ, we ask this be done, if it be your will, Heavenly Father. In Patreus, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dennis. Really great show. I enjoyed that. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Linda, for my hot pink comment. Wow, really had a great time. Thank you guys so much. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Yeah, so watch our schedule for tomorrow, starting off with Jan Breeze at 12 o'clock when most of you Americanos are sleeping. But who knows? Maybe you'll come and join me in the middle of the night, as I sometimes join you guys in the middle of the night as well. Okay, and again, thank you to beautiful Joanne for your super sticker, and Alexandra Bennett for joining as a new member. I really appreciate you guys, and thank you to everyone who supports this channel. Guys, honestly, I really appreciate you guys, whether it's through the Patreon, whether it's through the membership, whether it's through my PayPal or buy us a coffee. I so appreciate you. It's because of you guys that we are able to do what we do. And as you know, this is our community channel. So anyone who has a Make-A-Wish, please let me know. Anyone you all know about the Make-A-Wish. And business shout out for the members. If anyone wants a business shout out, any support for anything you're doing, let me know. We got Mother's Day coming up in a month's time as well. And you all know I'm a very, I've got a soft spot for single mothers. So start thinking, if there's a single mother out there you guys would like to nominate, that we could possibly help her, a single mother in need for the month of May. You can put her name forward to me so long. Let me know her needs, whatever. If it's you yourself, that's fine, or you can nominate someone, and we will see how we can support a single mother, or who knows, maybe more than one single mother for Mother's Day, May Mother's Day in May. Wonderful, and thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate you all. God bless you all. And don't be good. Have lots of fun. Okay, guys, take care.